Welcome, dear listener. Tonight, we're stepping back into the ancient world. This is a place shaped by ambition, geography, and the slow movement of power across time. A world where empires rise, collide, and endure far longer than the people who lead them. In this episode, we'll explore a question that defined centuries of history. Not just what happened, but why it happened, and why, in the end, the struggle never truly found a conclusion. Settle in, get comfortable, and let's begin. For centuries, two great powers faced one another across deserts, rivers, and mountains. They fought massive wars, signed fragile truces, and watched each other carefully from opposite sides of the frontier. And yet, despite all their strength, neither could ever truly defeat the other. This is the story of the long struggle between the Roman Empire and the many Persian states that opposed it. A rivalry that lasted hundreds of years, and a question that still lingers today. Why did this conflict never end in conquest? Chapter 1. Two worlds meet. When Rome expanded eastward, it eventually reached lands shaped by a very different tradition of power. Here, beyond the Mediterranean coast, influence flowed not from seas and roads, but from wide river valleys and open plains. Rome encountered first the Parthian Empire, and later its successor, the Sasanian Empire. These were not weak kingdoms on the edge of civilization. They were wealthy, organized, and deeply experienced in ruling vast territories. At first glance, conflict seemed inevitable. Both sides believed themselves to be rightful masters of the region between them. Both relied on prestige, control, and the loyalty of local rulers to maintain authority, but the nature of their power was very different. Chapter 2. How Rome Saw the World. To modern eyes, empires appear bounded by clear borders, but in the ancient world, borders were rarely fixed lines on a map. For Rome, power faded gradually rather than stopping abruptly. Control weakened with distance. Influence became indirect. Authority depended on cooperation as much as force. Instead of rigid frontiers, Rome relied on zones of control. Some areas were ruled directly. Others were managed through alliances, trade, and local leaders who answered to Rome in exchange for protection. This system worked well across much of Europe and the Mediterranean, but in the East, Rome encountered a rival that understood and practiced the same kind of indirect rule. Chapter 3. Geography as Destiny. The land itself shaped this rivalry. Rome thrived along coastlines and rivers that allowed armies to move and supplies to flow. In the western provinces, long rivers and fertile plains made expansion practical and profitable. The eastern frontier was different. Beyond the Euphrates lay vast open spaces, harsh climates, and mountain ranges that disrupted supply lines. Armies could march forward, but keeping them fed, paid, and loyal became increasingly difficult the farther they advanced. Persian rulers understood this terrain well. They avoided direct confrontation when possible. They stretched Roman supply lines. They relied on mobility and patience rather than decisive battles. In this environment, conquest was not impossible, but it was never easy. Chapter 4. The Role of Client Kings. Between Rome and Persia existed a patchwork of smaller states. These kingdoms were not simply passive buffers. They were active players, shifting loyalties when circumstances changed. Rome used diplomacy to manage these regions. Instead of permanent occupation, it often preferred influence. Local rulers governed day to day, while Rome intervened only when necessary. Persia did much the same. This created a delicate balance. Power flowed outward from both empires until it reached a point where further control became unstable. Beyond that point, resistance increased and benefits declined. The frontier settled into an uneasy equilibrium, not by agreement, but by reality. Chapter 5. The Temptation of Conquest. From time to time, Roman leaders believed they could break this balance. Earlier conquerors like Alexander the Great had marched deep into Persia and triumphed. So why not Rome? Several emperors attempted to go further east than ever before. Among them was Trajan, who led armies into Mesopotamia and even captured the Persian capital. For a moment, it seemed as though Rome might finally succeed, but victory on the battlefield did not equal control. Cities could be taken, but holding them required constant presence. Revolts erupted behind advancing armies, supply routes were strained, local rulers resisted long-term occupation. Rome could win wars, it struggled to win peace. Chapter 6: The Cost of Empire. Both Rome and Persia faced the same underlying problem: resources. Large armies were expensive, campaigns consumed enormous wealth. Maintaining control over distant lands required continuous investment. Rome possessed a powerful economic system, but even it had limits. Persia, while resilient, relied on a looser political structure that favored defense over expansion. Neither empire could afford endless war without risking internal stability. Each push forward created vulnerabilities elsewhere. Over time, leaders on both sides learned an important lesson. Pushing beyond the frontier brought diminishing returns. Chapter 7: A Rivalry Sustained by Balance. What emerged was not peace, but permanence. Wars continued, borders shifted slightly, cities changed hands, yet the overall balance remained. Rome and Persia were not locked in conflict because they were evenly matched in every battle. They were locked in conflict because geography, logistics, and politics made total victory unrealistic. Each empire defined the limits of the other. The enduring question: could Rome have conquered Persia? In theory, yes. Given perfect conditions, overwhelming resources, and favorable politics, conquest was possible. But history does not operate in perfect conditions. What mattered were the systems that sustained power, the land that shaped movement, and the people who lived between empires. These forces pushed both sides toward compromise, even when ambition pulled them toward conquest. Rome and Persia remained enemies not because they failed, but because equilibrium was the most stable outcome. Their rivalry was not a mistake of history, it was its natural result. The past rarely offers simple answers. More often, it reveals patterns of power, limits, and balance. The rivalry we explored tonight was shaped not by a single battle or ruler, but by geography, resources, and human choices made again and again over generations. Thank you for spending this time with me. If you enjoyed this journey into history, consider liking the video or subscribing for more calm explorations of the ancient world. Until next time, rest well and take care.